Okay, guys, you can hear my voice and see the PPT.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
okay, perfect. So, again, let's start by so we are doing this outsourcing, offshoring, and global production system. As I keep repeating, and I'll repeat once more. Read MDI 8 and MDI 7. Preferably read 8 first, then read 7. 8 gives you production process, 7 gives you labor movement. Inevitably, labor follows the production process. Why production processes has been changing is because the world, the population has been increasing. There is the complexity with increasing population, the way things are managed. On top of that, industrial revolution was a critical watershed point where things changed in drastic ways. However, saying that, as I keep repeating again, and I'll repeat again, things in the worldview of things work cyclically, especially in economics. So, yesterday in MDI 7, when we were reading about classical economics, we talked about surplus. Remember, Industrial Revolution brought in concepts like Taylorism and Fordism. Taylorism was scientific management. Fordism was in terms of assembly line. There was fixed products, fixed manufacture. Everything was fixed. Mass manufacture, mass consumption. The world as it has moved forward, and in fact, all these, mass production and mass consumption led to the people becoming more well off, being well off, their taste became better. Then, on top of that, there was a parallel engine of globalization where interconnectedness happened, where one could, savor other cultures, see what other peoples were doing, leading to a different sort of aspirations for whoever was consuming media, which led to flexible, taste. So, we looked at the fact that productions in medieval time was flexible with artisans, people, it was produced when they needed, to rigid productions, rigid labor in industrial area. And we have come back into flexible production because people want different things, different taste in different configurations, and the production process is changing accordingly, and so is the labor processes and the labor. So let's look at outsourcing, offshoring, and global production system. And as we go through the units, also look at what is unfolding. In fact, an amazing thing is unfolding in front of us with the new president of US announcing tariffs. And why, in this today's time, in the 21st century, how those things are unfolding, you can see directly, and you can then experience and understand what is happening. So, concept of offshoring, outsourcing, global production networks. 80s, a production within a plant or a facility, cooperation using staff and workers, and so were the services. They were central offices, central factories, in-house production, physical aspects. Everything was performed internally, designing, acquisition, raw material. So it was one big plant. So a lot of things we still understand in terms of production, because that is where the reference of industrial revolution comes in. Everything was in a production mode. Transaction and production were concentrated primarily in, and then everything was national. So, there was a geographical fencing around the plant, there was a geographical fencing around the nation. Economic exchanges were largely bounded by nation. This is also because of the fact, the means of transport, the means of communications were still evolving. Remember, everything as a process parallelly develops for the process to move forward. So it was purely national. Globalization and capitalist restructuring altered much of these. New models, actors, processes, how goods are produced, exchange in market, economic profits, gain. Everything was different. Remember the time, possibly some of you may not have been born in the 80s. There was no UPI, there was no debit cards, credit cards. If you had to do a transaction, you had to go to the bank, make a demand draft, or give a check, and so on and so forth. And now you see there is, you can from your mobile immediately send payments. Offshoring, outsourcing, and global production, the economic exchanges break free from the bounding of. Again, what was capitalism about? Capitalism was about making profits. How do you make profit? When either you create more surplus or you bring the cost of products down, cost of products or services. Now, with globalizations, production then shifted from a single within a nation coordinated by a single firm to multiple sites. Essentially, if I can bring the cost down in whatever way, the capitalists were able to do it. And now the transportation, the technology, the connectivity allowed me to do that. The location shifts marks the salient feature of offshoring, outsourcing, and global. And that is why the the tariff war, which has been started by the American president, you see how it is unraveling. So initially, he talked about, the government talked about tariffs. Then it was on Canada, Mexico, then the whole world. How they were calculated is itself was dodgy. Then uh, he announced that they are putting a stop for 90 days. Then yesterday it was announced that smartphones and laptops and computers are out of the tariff ambit. So obviously there is more that is happening besides the tariff or the unjust trade, because we will see as in the units how the supply chains have developed, how the concept of shoring and outsourcing, and how even a big economy and a powerful nation like United States has to bend down to to accommodate the capitalism which is there in the world today, and the globalization which is in the world today. Transnational movements enable a firm to avoid, and then these transnational movements enable firms to avoid regulatory norms at home, coordinate land labor. So today, the whole concept of governance itself has become extremely tricky, and each state has to walk a very fine line. So look at what happened when India decided to demonetize its currency. Indian currency was a fiat, currency used in all the SAARC countries. Once India decided to demonetize and then went through, 500, 2000, then taking back 2000, the Indian currency lost that value for the other SAARC nations. Today, SAARC nations do not take Indian currency as an exchange. For example, Nepal, you could easily transact in Indian currency. Nowadays, nobody takes Indian currency in Nepal. They might, but it's discounted. So all these movements, economic movements, are much different. There are much more complexities than what was there possibly in the 19th century or the 20th century. Transnational economic exchanges, certain questions as to what compelled the capitalist firm in advanced country to disperse. So let's look at how this works out. Is the cost advantage. Capitalism is all about profit. Profit can be either in terms of excess production, that is creating excess surplus, or push the cost down. Also, because of this Western advanced countries, there were regulatory mechanisms, there were institutional mechanisms to protect labor. Capitalists decided that if they can move out of these regulatory systems into markets down south which were unregulated, their cost could come down in terms of wages, in terms of employment condition, in terms of land acquisition. And that is where the global south has not been careful in terms of protecting its own citizens in the in that eldorado of of pushing growth, of pushing GDP, of getting businesses. They have that institutional mechanisms have been diluted over a period of time. Sanjeev, we shall see on subcontracting. So as we go along, you will
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
this will become clear. It will become clear. So when you have a central unit, obviously there's a higher cost because everything has to be done by you. So cost advantage was one of the biggest reasons where Western capital firms since the 70s, and it started slowly. It didn't happen overnight. It started slowly. One firm decided to experiment with this, found out there was advantage. Then, in corporate circles also, there are best practices. Then they realized that this could be done. So, for example, why US has exempted smartphone? Because obviously there has been major lobbying by Apple, because Apple's total production happens in China and possibly part of it in India. Why it happens in China and India? Because regulatory mechanisms are extremely lax, working conditions are extremely bad. They can push down the cost and make and have this extreme profits. The second inducement was inventions in information technology, communication, transport to overcome limitation posed by physical distance. So you say it doesn't happen in one sphere. There are major innovations and disruptions happening in multiple spheres, and somewhere they come together to create a better chain or better profit or better working for the capitalists. For instantaneous communication, static social realities controlled by physics. So no longer is a physical presence required. For example, today we are able to take this class where you can sit at wherever you want. You can either sit at one place, you can travel, and yet we can exchange ideas, notes, and information. To effectively coordinate in real time, inter-processor production in different locations, social actors involved in. So conceptually, you can understand why this was done, and why this became the reality. Outsourcing. So quickly, definitions: act of obtaining goods and services by firm from outside its boundaries. So it could be outside a particular a factory place, or outside a city, or outside a state, or outside a nation. Internally, or to buy them from entities outside, can produce a wide range of good of service, especially with because of flexible taste. Now I do not need to invest. Also, the fact is, any centralized production unit needs a heavy investment. It needs to invest in building, and invest in facilities. You have to get workers, you have to take care of the workers. Now I can get people to open their units and say, these are my specifications, please produce. Typically contracted out a number of routine tasks to third parties. So contracting is you give a third party a particular task. Sanjeev, subcontracting is when you give a contractor a particular task, who in turn subcontracts to some other person.
Okay.
So that is contracting and subcontracting.
Sir.
So now point is, how are the companies controlling that production? Is it part of the production which is contracted or subcontracted? In outsourcing, possibly the whole product or a particular product or a complete part of a product is outsourced to some other party.
Sir.
So again, it depends on technicalities, how we are looking at it. As we go on, it will become much more clearer.
Okay, sir.
Subsequent decades, when outsourcing exploded into popular, it was well beyond externalized routine activities, including core tasks of business such as customer care, information technology, marketing. So today, just about a company can exist, does not even need a brick and mortar place. It can be a virtual company where various tasks are given to various units, where it's assembled. And so, for example, look at Amazon. It is not even a brick and mortar thing, and yet it is a retailer. And today, as I said, you can write a book and get it uploaded on Amazon. And if somebody wants a book printed, they can order, and Amazon will print it through a third party and deliver it to that person. So where you are sitting, where the order is given, where the printing is happening, where the delivery is done, can be four different locations, either in one nation or in multiple nations. Any particular branch of business or industrial segment, spread to all sectors. Essentially, whichever thing allowed the capitalists to make more profit was used. Outsourcing. What is offshoring? Now, typically, outsourcing is outside the boundaries of a company. Offshoring is outside the boundaries of a nation, from domestic to overseas location. Why do you do from domestic to overseas? You get cheaper labor, you get less regulatory norms, you get more institutional support. Globalization interconnected national economies, which were insulated earlier. Now it's very easy to get Apple sitting in the US, having its global office in the US, to have a company like Foxconn based out of China, creates all the standards, all the thing, overcomes the regulatory mechanisms, overcomes the corruption, overcomes labor norms, overcomes the working environment, gets the cheapest Apple produced, which the Apple sells now in global market as an Apple product, takes the brand equity of Apple, and gets the maximum profit. Outsourcing reveals fragmented nature of production when companies decide to buy goods and services from supplier outside. In offshoring, geographical dispersal as companies outsource the supply of goods and services from based on overseas location. So, a lot of US companies, their technical support happens from India. So all these call centers are doing, a particular business process outsourcing, because it's much cheaper. And when you look at the dollar rupee convertibility, even if a person is getting a lakh rupees in India, that's nothing compared to dollars. And if they were to take a US based person, not only they would have to pay in dollars, they would have to look at the fact that all regulatory mechanisms need to be followed, they need to unionize and so on. So in India, they don't care. So you are working on Diwali, you are working on everything, you are following their holidays. They are more than happy. Labor and natural resources that available at comparatively cheaper rates had become much earlier. So 60s increasing production costs and falling forced West German garment manufacturers to relocate their facility. So as I said, nothing happens overnight. There is a process by which it happens, and every new thing which happens has a precursor. As we have seen, industrial revolution and the factory model had a precursor in the manufactories. Of outsourcing, offshoring, or outsourcing had a precursor in putting out system in the Middle Ages. So everything has already happened. it is much more refined and much more complex. Not only the low wage labor available in the developing countries, trade rules which reduce tariff in outward. So now one of the possible explanation given by the Trump administration is that by these higher tariffs, they are going to, kickstart the manufacturing process in the US. Now, when you go through this presentation, you realize how that also is going to be difficult, because there are so many conditions and complexities to do all that. You need technical skills, you need manpower, you need trained manpower, you need enough sufficient manpower, you need land, you need capital to invest. The capital has moved, the capital always moves. And anything which is any step which is done by one state, or any conflict or event which happens, shakes up the whole global market. So you saw the global share markets dipped, and then yesterday I was seeing this video that the share market dipped, and then it came to the US bonds, and it's actually the US bonds which fuel the debt economy of the US. As the price of the debt bond started falling, these guys got shaken because it could lead to a global meltdown, and that's why the tariffs were paused. So it's quite interesting. Economics is actually very interesting. Do organization shifts in the way production is organized? Firstly, in outsourcing, production of goods and services are fragmented into separate tasks, which are then subcontracted to firms and entities outside. Different aspects. So Sanjeev, if you see, subcontracting and outsourcing are sometimes used interchangeably.
Sir.
So inevitably, how they are different, we will come to that. Is there any difference? But a lot of times they are, you are subcontracting to a firm which is outside your border.
Sir.
Or you're giving the whole process to a firm which is outside.
Sir.
In a way, that is also subcontracting.
Yes.
So we'll see this, where is this a gray area, or it has some scholar defined something more, cogent to understand it. Okay. First is the outsourcing. Production of goods and services are fragmented and subcontracted to firms and entities outside. System function in a coherent fashion is a network logic shared by those who are partnering in it. Typically, you can see in a simple example, Maruti and its ancillaries. So various ancillaries, Maruti tells its ancillaries that we need an axle, we need wheels, we need tires, we need this. So those are based on the specification of, let's say, an Maruti Alto car, those ancillaries design the product, send it to Maruti, which assembles it. But here in this model, Maruti has an industrial unit. So it is contracting. It is contracting or subcontracting. It is not moving the whole car production outside. Okay. Second, offshoring the production is geographically dispersed across different nations and continents. So in car manufacturer, possibly still, there is a central production process where processes are subcontracted or contracted and they are brought back. But we have, if you see videos about the Mexican, US and Canadian economy and their interlinking, car manufacturing in the US almost looks at parts going from US to Canada back to US almost 8 times. They are moving back and forth in the production process. So when Trump puts his tariffs on Canada in terms of aluminium, the car manufacturers started laying off their employees, because now the production system are so interconnected. Things are moving back and forth. Technology firm based in Seattle controls the design of its products while subcontracting equipment manufacturer in Taiwan. Carry out the actual production process using components supplied by firms located in China. Now, when US markets shake, Taiwan shakes, China shakes. But we do not know how the Taiwanese are doing the business. Are they getting it from Japan? How the Chinese are doing? Are they getting something from Russia? We do not know. In a way, the factory has become a global in scope, as in activities involved in production, design, component supply, assembling, disengaging, geographical spread. So when China put reverse tariffs on the US, one of the components they put was stopping rare earth metals, rare earth minerals. Now, rare earth minerals are what goes into electric vehicles, which Tesla produces. So you see how interconnected the world has become. And any unilateral action, even pandering to a ideology or politics of a particular ideology, can have global impact economically. And then what has been produced is what is called global production networks. So no longer is any particular company or any particular nation involved in the producing of any system. Look at the way data is flowing. So, Facebook is a US-based company. You are sitting in India, putting your data onto Facebook. Their data centers are possibly sitting in Norway. There are data brokers in India or China. Where is this data being processed? I do not know. How does this data move? It's almost a global production network. The geographical dispersed organization of production of goods and services. And there is another term which is called commodity chains to describe production networks with global scope. Commodity chains. Kaplinski has used the term global value chains because at the end of the day, these chains provide value. Who do they provide value to? They not only provide value to the capitalist who makes more profit, they also provide value to the customer who gets diversity. Same set of production process and the ways in which they are organized in the global economy. Everything which any political leader does in any country has ramifications across. Offshoring affects labor market in the country of origin. Yes. Uh, uh, Again, one of the factors of the rise of Donald Trump, make America great again, and the Republican Party, was the fact that because the American companies were offshoring most of their tasks, most of the manufacturing had shifted to China, most of the services had shifted to countries like India and other third world countries. uh, you know, Another factor was the fact that because it was cheaper, obviously, those Americans, especially in the Midwest, or those what they call the red states, were feeling the pinch of unemployment. Remember, America today also runs based on immigrant experience and skill. The largest part of Silicon Valley, the technology base, is made up of Indians and Chinese. Now, somewhere down the line, this was identity politics. Pander to that make in America great again. Essentially, and if you see, this is not an American phenomena, it's a European phenomena, it's an Indian phenomena. wherever there is a set of politicians who are tapping into this particular identity politics. But now the fact is, every time the manufacturing shift because of capitalism making more profit, finding it efficient, there is a rise of unemployment. And one of the reasons what has been taken in terms of putting of tariffs was the fact that the manufacturing will come back and so will the jobs. But we know now it is not so easy. Domingos?
Noted, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
There exist differences in terms of meaning, analytical focus, and methodology. So, dominated the study of global commodity chain concept, global production network. There are two ways it is defined: commodity chain and production networks. Although these two approaches are overlapping in terms of analytic, their origins are rooted in different methodological. So, again, remember, scholars have come up with different notions or the way they have identified and typecasted. More often than not, they are approximately the same: commodity chain and production. So let's look at quickly what it is. As a non-economic students, do not get stuck with it. You can say scholars have defined it as commodity chain or production network. At the end of the day, idea is that you are getting to manufacture or outsource processes wherever you are able to get more profits. Commodity chain developed by Gary Graffiti to explain how the process of capital production has become global in scope. Global organization of production. Production, we are still talking about production because our frame of reference always is industrial revolution. Considering the fact a lot of things happen today in the services sector, we're still talking about production. Dependency and world system networks. Now these are different networks. I don't think so you should dwell too much into this, because that gets you stuck into the economic framework. Just understand the fact that there are global commodity chains and global production networks. So I'll skip this. I'll come to production network. So what is the production network? Hang on, I'll skip this. Hopkins and Wollaston defined commodity chains as a network of labor and production process whose end result is a finished process. So, what is this global chain or a production process? Network of labor and production process whose end result is a finished product. So, instead of the earlier industrial revolution where there was a factory environment, where there was a production process, what we call the Fordist model, where from the raw materials to the end product happened in a centralized unit. Now various things happen at various places to get a finished product. A global commodity chain is comprised of set of interconnected inter-organization network formed around one commodity or product. So if there is a mobile phone to be made, the mobile phone might be made in China, the chips might be coming from Taiwan, the software might come from India, the specifications might come from the US, the data centers for Apple might be Norway or Sweden, and for a customer, let's say in Sri Lanka or let's say in Mozambique, who picks up an iPhone, for him or her, it's a seamless experience. He gets an iPhone, he or she gets an iPhone. The network links household, enterprises, states to one another in the world economy. GCC refers to specific networks of economic organizations that have come to form for the production of a commodity. So whatever comes to form the product or a commodity is the global commodity chain. Is that clear? Is that simple enough? Guys?
Somewhat, sir.
Tell me where the confusion is.
Until this slide, it was okay. Now this slide, little bit confusing.
Okay, so let's start again. you want to buy an Apple phone.
Yes, I understood that concept, sir. Like
Okay.
we get products from different areas.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
Globalize. We can say it in a short word that due to that globalization system, we get all those things from different countries.
Correct.
Sir.
So where was the confusion?
Little bit. I mean, I got off from the class actually.
Okay. I moved couple of slides because
Yes.
I moved those slides because you could go through the unit, but you will get stuck onto the economic angle. I don't want you to get stuck on the economic angle.
Okay, sir.
I'm looking at if you get a question to say what is outsourcing, offshoring, wide or global production networks, you can write a short note.
Sir.
And I've given you a little history to tell you why this made sense. So, I've made things simple so that you are able to write an answer in your end term examination and not get stuck with the economics of it, and yet be able to understand the larger concept of the economic model.
Sir.
Sanjeev?
Sir.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Then let's not get into the details because the unit has been written from an economic perspective.
Sir.
If you get stuck on an economic perspective, you will not be able to write your examination.
Sir.
Okay. Okay. Let's move forward. Why do they call it a household or economic organization? Because now in this model, for example, some of the, let's say, the casing of iPhone, or let's say the back plastic casing of an iPhone with multiple designs might actually be done in a household as a small unit, which is subcontracted by a contractor who has got the plastic casing of the iPhone to some households and say you do the design. That way you get multiple flexibility and creativity, and those households are supplying labor and getting wages out of it. And because these networks are not entirely autonomous in terms of what they do, each of these networks has specific characteristics as they are rooted in particular places as well as distinct social milieu. So, for example, let's say the plastic casings of the iPhone has a particular Pokemon figures. Now, Pokemon comes out of a social milieu of, let's say, Japanese culture, animation, anime culture. So a set of people out there, based on their specification, make those back covers, which then become very popular worldwide. And yet they become an economic organization. Am I making sense? Guys? Guys, am I making sense?
Can you repeat, sir? I didn't get.
Okay. Hang on. Let me move this slide then. Let me move this slide. So what they are also in this global commodity chain perspective, also they are talking about social embeddedness. What is the social embeddedness they are talking about? Say, for example, the manufacturing is done in a particular place. Let's say the manufacturing is done in a place called in a country called China, and China has a particular social or a cultural milieu. And let's say enemy is the cultural milieu of China. And suppose Apple says the plastic, back covers. If you see a mobile phone has a back plastic protective cover. There's a front, what is called a glass covering for the to make sure that the mobile does not crack. But there's a back plastic cover, and Apple subcontracts and says make some creative designs on the back cover. Okay, is that clear?
Clear, sir.
Okay. Now when the household or economic units in Japan are making those back covers, they will design according to their cultural, social or their cultural construct. And let's say anime or Pokemon images are their cultural construct. So a lot of the covers which come out of Japan will have a lot of Pokemons and similar figures.
Done, sir. Very clear. Done. I got it.
Similarly, if something is coming out of India in the rural areas, you will have, a dash of color. So now this is how also diverse our local societies in India, Bangladesh, China. So when you are subcontracting these, there is a certain amount of social embeddedness which also comes out there. And how these differentiated organizations come under different governing norms, level of economic determination, diffusion of tech. So one needs to understand, for example, if you subcontract work into, let's say, Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh, the way Bangladesh society is organized, there will be certain amount you will have to figure out that particular level of social organization to run your business out there. You cannot run your business in Bangladesh based on factors in what happens in the US. Clear?
Clear, sir. Clear.
So that's what they are saying. So global commodity chain perspective also has to consider local environments, local social norms. For example, in certain tasks in India, there will be a caste component about who can work in these factories and who cannot.
Sir. So, sir,
Yeah.
With Trump's recent action regarding tariffs,
Okay.
this social embeddedness will be missing. For
No. Trump's tariffs have nothing to do with the social embeddedness. This social embeddedness comes as a part of the global commodity chains. So when companies like Apple or companies like GM or other companies subcontract business. So for example, GE Capital subcontracts part of its service network into call centers in India.
Sir.
When they subcontract their call centers into India, the Indian way of working also would have to be considered in terms of Indian regulatory environment, a set of Indian, working norms, how men would function, how women would function, what would be the regular. So all these things have to be considered when you subcontract, and you have to account for all these.
Yes, sir. That is what, sir. Sir, what I understood with the Trump's recent move is that he wants to be a self-independent.
Correct.
Right, sir. Then when he introduced this system, for saying there will be some problem, like there will be no jobs or employment. Say for example, after 5 years, the US may become a self-dependent where it can provide lot of employment to younger generations.
Okay.
So, so the Trump's move may be, correct at certain point of time.
Okay.
So this social embeddedness will not be there during that 5-year period or whatever it is.
No. So the social embeddedness is part of the production process. So now you are arguing on two different planes.
Sir.
On an economic plane, the tariff move ostensibly is narrated out as a move to bring back jobs in the US.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Social embeddedness is a separate thing in the production networks. So social embeddedness would be, how would Americans come back? How would Americans work on a call center? Can Americans work on a call center? Do they have the necessary technical skills to open a call center in America? Is the regulatory network and the wages set for opening up a call center in America? That's a separate thing. There are two separate things that we are talking about.
Okay.
You're getting it?
Yes.
One is an economic policy of a nation to try and get back jobs.
Yes.
which may or may not happen, considering the fact it is something like this.
Yes.
Sanjeev, once you grow and you start traveling out of your house and seeing the world, now as you were growing up, your parents told you certain things about the world which you believed as true because they are your parents. But once you grew up and started traveling out of your house and seeing the world, engaging with it, had friends, interpreted the world, you suddenly realize that what your parents told need not be true or need not be 100% true.
Yes, sir.
Now you cannot come to the same state as what you were when you were in class 5th or class 6th.
Sir.
Yes, in spite of the fact that your parents want or you want, things cannot come back to the same state.
Sir.
Because there is a social embeddedness in you going out, learning new things, new cultures, new ways.
Yes.
You know, similarly, when a political rhetoric talks about the good days of India gone by, but India has moved. India's culture has moved. Yes. India's people has moved. The way of thinking has moved. The value system has moved. The morality has moved. How can you go back into the 16th century?
Yes.
So you see, that's where the difference between political, economic. Economic is current reality.
Sir.
Political is much more different. It's a different engine.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Got it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Perfect. Let's move ahead. Commodity chains involve a series of process existence when it comes. So basically, all these commodity chains and production processes are a series of steps which allows how the product comes into being. Each processes or specific segments can be represented as node linked towards a network. So look at it as a giant mesh where there is a starting point and an ending point. The starting point is the company, the ending point is the consumer. How the things travel to reach the ending point is the global commodity chain perspective. And all these things are explanations to that. So as I said, when you get a question in terms of production networks or a commodity chains, you can think about a mesh and, craft an answer to reply and get marks. Clear? Guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commodity chains involves acquisition of inputs such as raw materials, labor, power, transportation, distribution, and final stages of consumption. In terms of sequential stages for input acquisition. So essentially the same thing is being told in multiple ways. And the brief is things can be, raw materials can be supplied from various places. Production can happen in various places. Completion can happen in various places. And the product can be picked off by a customer at various places. So everything is flexible. And then you can subsequent understand with all these flexible production processes, how the labor needs to be flexible. And the reason why today flexible labor is the norm. There is, and the whole process of job security and confirmed, jobs is reducing because everything is becoming flexible. So now relevant questions. How do these global commodity chains accumulate and distribute profits within the network? So now we have understood the fact that production can happen anywhere, raw materials can come from anywhere, transmission, storage, everything can happen everywhere, retail can happen somewhere, and the customer gets it. But how is the profit shared? Are all nodes or constituents economic actors such as household, labor, entrepreneurs, enterprises, consumers gain from participating in the chain? Now, this needs to be understood. This is a core question. Guys, are you with me? till now? Guys, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have understood the fact that everything has become flexible to produce a product for the customer who wants a flexible product. He's got flexible taste, he's got varying taste, he wants diverse products. So now, based on various flexible production, the customer has got his flexible products. How is the profit going to be shared? And are all node and constituents. So let's say, for example, an iPhone cover, as I gave in the earlier example, is done by a household in Japan. Will the household get an equal percentage of the profit which Apple makes while selling the iPhone? Say, for example, an iPhone is sold at 1 lakh rupees. Will the Japanese household get a proportionate margin in terms of the effort they put? So, relevant question. Considerable inequalities within the network in terms of distribution of economic benefits. GCC are held together by the coordination through different set of economic norms. What are the governing norms and the structure that control the global commodity chain? It's the power relationship that influence how financial material labor is distributed within GCC. So, for example, when India comes with Make in India and say we want to manufacture and shows a desperation for manufacture, a Western nation will say, okay, here is what we will offload to outsource to you for manufacturing. But to outsource to you for manufacturing, let's say Apple says, oh, we are going to get Apple phones to manufacture in India. But we want this in concession. We want tax concessions. We want this concession. Now, India, like a developing country, as other developing countries go head over heels in trying to accommodate the pressure which the US company is putting on you. It is already an unequal relationship. It is like when you go for a job to an employer, it's an unequal relationship. You might have all the necessary skills, but the employer is giving you a job. Guys, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He has observed that governance structure is essential to the coordination of the transnational production. Two types of governance structures, producer-driven and buyer-driven. So there is a little complexity in this also. However, there is always an unequal power structure, which we have seen in economic transactions when we experience economic transactions. So when you go to a vegetable vendor, you try and push down the price. But when you go to a 5-star hotel, none of us ever ask them for a discount. It's an unequal power structure. Whenever you go to a vendor, a roadside vendor, you try and push down the price. But whenever you go to a big establishment, you never ask for a discount. There's an unequal power structure.
What is that, sir? Unequal?
Power structure.
Power structure, okay. So why
Sanjeev,
it could be, sir? Why it could?
Sanjeev, it is always the case. As I said, when you go to a roadside vendor, you are more powerful than the roadside vendor.
Yes.
So you try and negotiate. You say, this is expensive. He'll say apples are 200 rupees a kg. You say you are giving expensive, give me 150 rupees, not 200. He might come and says, okay, sir, take it for 180 rupees. So you are pushing down his margins. But if you go to a 5-star hotel, you can never tell them your dish is 1,000 rupees. Please give me for 500 rupees.
Yes.
And how these power structures are maintained. So they have a menu, the 5-star hotel, in which the rate list is given. the roadside vendor has no written menu, no fixed prices. There is fluctuating based on, it is buyer driven.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Whereas 5-star is producer driven.
Producer driven.
Yes, it is producer driven because they are offering you a service. They are producing a service and giving it to you.
Yes.
So let's look at it a little further. Producer driven, buyer driven. Industries in which large corporations play a central role in controlling the production process is producer driven. Characteristics of capital and technology. Apple, producer driven. Intensive industries, automobiles, computers, aircraft, electrical machinery, producer driven. Big companies. These industries are transnational production systems, sequences of production spread through different. As I gave you an example of 5-star hotel, it's a producer driven. They are offering you a service. If 5-star hotel, if the same food of a 5-star hotel, you go to a food cart, then it is buyer driven. You are going to be negotiating with the prices unless there is a menu card, it is in a fancy area, there are fancy signage out there, then it will be producer driven.
Yes, sir.
Guys, am I able to get myself?
Yes, sir.
Clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, sir.
Okay. For labor intensive components, production typically resort to international stuff. These are producer driven commodity chains. Administrative headquarters of large corporation exercise effective control. So there's one central headquarters and it will exercise. Facebook, Twitter, these are all production. Tesla, all producer driven. So then let's look at what is buyer driven. Industries in which large retailers, well-recognized branded merchants are principal organizer of chains. Large branded retailers set up decentralized production, low-wage economies of developing countries. Typically labor-intensive consumer industries such as garment, footwear, toys, electronics, houseware, where people are not willing to pay beyond. Zara, look at Zara as a brand. Low-cost garments, quick changes of fashion. Handicrafts, India.
Sir.
Now, even in handicrafts, the artisans in the rural village level who make those handicrafts hardly earn as much as what you can if you go to cottage emporiums in Delhi. If you see the price out there, and if you go to where these handicrafts are manufactured, it's almost you look at agriculture produce.
Yes, sir.
The price of onions and potatoes that you get in retail at your household and what the farmer gets, there is a huge difference, almost 10 times to 20 times.
Yes, yes. Yes, sir.
So it's an unequal network. But the networks have also been categorized as producer driven or buyer driven. Production carried out by factory towns in developing countries. Crucial difference between two types of chains is the way production is organized. Producer-driven chains, contract manufacturers only involved in component production. Buyer-driven network, the contracted firms produce finished goods under original equipment manufacturer, OEMs. So Bangladesh produces all those Zara products in terms of shirts, which earlier was done in India. So a lot of Indian manufacturing has moved to Bangladesh because it's much cheaper out there. You can pay those people. And again, you will also understand what we are studying in MDI 7, how manufacturing has gone into women to employ more women, because women labor, you pay less. They are more docile. You can push down. You don't need to, enforce any laws. You remember that factory collapse in Dhaka where almost 1,000 people died? Lax norms, unhealthy working condition. Same is typically said in Foxconn factories in China. That is the way global networks make more money. So the global production network is the same as commodity chains, GCC and GPN. They use the term production rather than commodity and network, rather than chain as their key analytic. So chain is more of a linear concept. Production is a non-linear concept. That's the difference. So if you get a question like this, you can say either a chain or a production network. Two set of scholars put it in a different way. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Plays more emphasis on social processes involved in the production, enables us to understand why. So let's skip this. I don't want you to get the metaphor of a chain used in GCC, that the relationship between economic actors are linear and stable. That is why they called it a chain. But at the level of social processes, we see that the relationships are fairly complex than a linear chain image usually project. And these are not simple networks, these are complex. And over a period of time, these networks have developed. And that is why what is happening with these tariffs is very interesting, because I want to see how it unfolds. So everybody, now this is a major disruption which has happened. It's a complexity of relationships, and their multi-directional movements are better captured in the metaphor of a network. You should see that if you go on to YouTube, search how the US automobile manufacturers and the Canadian automobile manufacturers are connected. It's a very interesting thing how these parts go back and forth between US, Canada, and Mexico. And these were facilitated by the North American Free Trade Agreement. Things moving back and forth. So yesterday I was listening to this economist who was saying the fact that Trump administration is slowly realizing that it is not easy, come up with a political rhetoric. There are many more complexities today in the process. And in all likelihood, they will keep rolling back things. The production networks have become organizationally more complex and increasingly global in their geographical scope. So the chain, the one set of scholars called it a commodity chain, almost gives a metaphor of linear. Production networks is more like a mesh. It's a network. The spread of production networks have brought a new set of relationship in global economy that blood traditional organization of production. So, for example, as I said, Foxconn in China is a whole subsidiary. Look at Amazon. When Amazon came into India, and the Indian government, in trying to prevent Amazon from encroaching upon the mom and dad stores or the local kirana stores, brought in a law that Amazon cannot hoard stuff and sell it. Amazon came out with subsidiaries which hoarded stuff, like Cloudtail, which hoarded stuff and sold it. So they were able to bypass the Indian government regulation. Now look what Amazon does. Any product which sells very well on Amazon, which is manufactured by any Indian company, Amazon duplicates that and sells it under the Solimo brand name. So a new set of relationships which are happening. It's not that the kirana shops have closed down. The kirana shops also are coming up with new innovative models for selling, like, for example, home deliveries. They set up relationships with their customers.
Like for example?
Like Kirana shops also are starting to do home deliveries, which
Yes.
earlier they were not. It's a new form of product distribution. Like today, Kirana shop, you can connect with your Kirana shop or your chemist through WhatsApp, and
Yes.
deliveries can be done. Orders
Yes.
can be placed and deliveries can.
Yes.
So these are new models of distribution, new relationships getting formed. Okay. Firms, labor, and state are essentially territorial. They are a part of a nation state. But production networks are not territorial. They cut through boundaries, linking firms, labor markets, and technology systems. And everything that is done has a intended consequence and an unintended consequence. As I was giving you an example of intended and unintended consequence, Qatar hosts World Cup, build big stadiums, get in labor from India, Nepal, and third world countries. Single men, no form of entertainment, leads to demand for sex. Bring in a new sex industry in Qatar. Unintended consequence leads to human trafficking. Every component of the economic system has intended and unintended consequence. What are the governing norms? How the corporate power is distributed within the production networks? Can a global firm vertically integrate the production network and enforce economic control over other actors? Another two set of questions. So now, as you go through this production networks and you see that it's a mesh, you try and figure out how is this complexities figured out, and then you understand that economics, and that is why it is very important to have a policy rather than doing ad hoc stuff. And then you also understand that a lot of times the governments, in the mirage of political chasing, do ad hocism, leading to ramifications. A production network is dispersed into different national regulatory regimes, territories, markets, and social systems. Based in production networks, the firms are based in developed countries, US, Western Europe, but the contract manufacturers are from developing countries like China, India, and Bangladesh. So that is the model. Low-wage migrant workers employed in contract manufacturers and high-wage white-collar professional and technicians working in companies. Design, divisions, marketing are vastly different in terms of their function as well as value they create for the firms. So a lot of designing happens in the West, whereas the manufacturing low-wage labor happens in the global South. And you can already see a power structure out here. For example, the white worker is called an expat, whereas the brown and the black worker is called a migrant. Why is that so? It's a political power structure. Guys, you are with me?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes, Sanjeev.
Sir, what I differ with the statement that the low-wage migrant workers employed in the contract manufacturers are getting low wages in comparison with the design-making white-collar jobs.
Correct.
I think that white-collar job person will do a specific work.
Correct.
But for making that specific work into a product, you require some skill.
Correct.
So why there would be the wage difference?
Okay, so now, Sanjeev, you need to understand the fact that typically why is outsourcing being done? Because outsourcing is done because they are able to depress the wage of the contract labor in the developing countries,
Sir.
which allows them to make more profit.
Sir.
The white collar worker sitting, let's say, in the developed country is bound by regulatory norms out there.
Sir.
So they are bound to pay him or her higher wages.
Sir.
But because they have subcontracted the development, the manufacturing work out here, where there are no regulatory laws, there is nobody taking care of these guys, you are able to push the wage down.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So you understand that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is the reason why these people are not able to accrue the benefits out of the products like Apple. They get less, whereas Apple is sold at such a high cost.
Yes, sir.
Or for that matter, why the farmer who produces food and crops is not able to get enough remuneration for his crop, whereas the people like Reliance or other companies which are selling in retailers are making huge profits.
Yes.
You understand? There
Yes,
is an
sir.
unequal power structure difference.
Yes.
There's an unequal power structure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. However, the network to sustain and continue to generate profits, contract manufacturers, component suppliers, labor and trade unions all play a significant role. Production networks is flexible organization form where domestic firms, government and laborers have relative autonomy. So for example, when Apple works an understanding with the Indian government and says that if you want manufacturing from us, these are the conditions that we want for you to give, and the Indian government gives those conditions, obviously Apple is looking at some benefit to do that. Otherwise, why would they do it?
Sir.
So when Indian government writes off the loans of industrialists and goes after the farmer, obviously there is an unequal power structure. Understand one thing, that politics is an important component in the whole process.
Yes.
And that politics happens locally, nationally, and globally. It's a very important part of the whole human, civilization or human system of evolution. Let's not, let's understand it as it is.
Sir.
Okay?
Sir.
And everything has an implication. As I said, as I was talking yesterday, understand capitalism is only for making profit, nothing else. They don't care anything. And that's where other processes, institutions have to come in to protect interest.
Okay.
So if you are working in a call center, and if Diwali is your most important festival and they are not giving you a holiday and you choose to work, that's your call.
Yes.
Or the government should push their foot down and say that it's our national holiday. So if there is no regulatory mechanism, you do not have the power to say no. Well, then obviously your wages are being depressed. It's flexible working.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
How about value is created within how is the value created? For Henderson et al., value has twofold meaning. One that is derived from Marx's notion of surplus value, and the other associated with economic rent. This has also become a little complicated. So, as I was telling, how do you make profit? Profit can be made either from a surplus or from depressing or from reducing cost. Similarly, how is value of a product created? Either from a surplus, or what they have brought in a new concept called economic rent. Now, what is an economic rent? Conditions under which labor power is converted into actual labor. This also again is extremely focused towards economics. Maybe you can skip it. Maybe you guys can skip it, because this might get a little complicated as we go along.
Yes, yes. Sir, even profit can be made when there is no product. I mean, when there is less supply of product.
Correct. Again, how? So what they are saying is, when you're talking about surplus, it is something like this. This surplus is not about supply and demand. It's a separate thing.
Okay.
This surplus is about the fact that if I have 100 iPhones to sell, sure, and I am if 10 are utilized by the employees of Apple, I have got 90 surplus, which if I sell, I will make a profit.
Sure.
Similarly, if the farmer produces 10 kgs of rice and he utilizes 2 kgs, he's got 8 kg surplus, which he can sell for profit.
Okay.
This is that surplus.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Let's quickly look at what is economic rent. Let's forget this rent also. I think let's forget this. Otherwise, this is getting a
complicated, sir.
It's becoming complicated.
Yes, sir.
So just understand the fact that there are two ways a capitalist can produce a profit. One is creating surplus, and the second is to bring the cost of the product down. Sir. And the global production networks, or the global commodity chains, which are two different concepts brought in by two different scholars, essentially means the same, are networks which are able to produce products globally instead of putting it nationally or within a particular factory system. Okay. Okay. So let's leave this in terms of there are a lot of sub endings to this. We will skip this because this unnecessarily will confuse you. So let's look at an Indian case study quickly. Changes in the production brings about changes in labor, and that's why I keep telling you, read MDI 8 first, then read MDI 7. Again, when you are studying the units, don't go deep into it. Try and keep it in terms of broad-based concepts so that you are able to answer a question. Key term used in labor studies is flexibilization. Because of these global production networks and the flexibility of production, the labor is becoming flexible. Decline of relatively stable employment, which was earlier Fordist industrial, into new forms of employment with not much long-term employment or wage security. So yesterday, Vinod was asking me the question, what will happen with AI and all that stuff? And I answered and said that today, any skill that you have will need to be upgraded, or new skills need to be added because things might change suddenly. Labor flexibility dominant. Lies of flexibility leads to temporary part-time and contract work. Flexibility not only in terms of organization, but work processes. Business firms operate mainly in project subcontracts. So these are the key points that you can do to craft an answer. In case a question comes in terms of how are the production changes or the labor changes happening in the 21st century. So for example, with respect to workforce, reduces or increases number, terms of wages calculated linked to workers' individual performance. How do you understand shift in labor flexibilization? What is the manufacturing? Typically the IT sector. Because India is going to follow what is happening in the global stage. So if you are seeing the global stage, you are seeing what is happening, India is following the same thing. You will see more and more contractual work happening in Indian government. You're seeing more and more contractual work happening in Indian private sector. Integrated sector like information technology enabled service, automobile assembly, garment manufacturers. So the keyword is labor flexibilization, which create different economic and social outcomes for workers. Are you with me here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Nearly all of IT jobs, employment, conditions of work are flexible. How the IT job is flexible in terms of long working hours, body shopping, job security, hire and fire. These are all annual retrenchment. These are all flexibilities. Nobody joins a company and retires from that company anymore.
Sir, but as a student, if we write about flexibility, means we don't go into the negative side of the flexibility factors, sir.
See, listen. When you say
like iron fire.
Listen, it is not about positivity or negativity. You are explaining what it is.
Okay.
So if globalization has increased profits for the capitalists, it has led to conditions which are harsher in terms of social and economic implication for the worker.
Sir.
You are not giving a moral science lecture.
Okay.
You are answering a question as to what it is.
Sir.
And again, you are not giving an examination for a government service where the government might get angry that you are writing something negative. You are giving an answer where the units talks about positives and negatives. So write whatever it is.
Okay.
Okay. Body shopping, supplying labor abroad. Nearly all the large software companies recruit 10 to 20% of the short-term contract from third-party intermediaries. This is the way it is going to happen. It's going to increase. Indian companies already are subcontracting in terms of workers coming in to clean, HR functions, call centers. Everything is flexibilization. Long and extended workers are another form of flexibility. Working on holidays, companies expect you to be working late till evening.
Yes.
It's a form of flexibilization.
Yes.
Taking more value out of the money that they give you. Okay. Okay.
What actually body shopping, sir?
Body shopping is, hang on, let me just close it down. Let me switch off my video. Hi. So IT companies, earlier this term was more prevalent. For example, TCS, Infosys, a lot of companies, what they used to do is they would hire engineers. When outsourcing was not so much prevalent, so they would hire engineers. So this US company wants some software engineers. So rather than pick up software engineers from US or Europe, they would ask Indian companies to lend their engineers for some time.
Okay. Yes.
It was called body shopping because you are sending a body from here to there.
Okay.
These people then work as contractors with those companies for a period of 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. And then they are sent back.
L1 visa.
Whatever.
Yeah, yes.
So these were called body shopping. Not anymore, because now they have these companies, these Western companies have, offshored all the, the processes.
Yes.
So you don't need an engineer there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is because of the development in the technology.
Correct. Absolutely. So internet has allowed, computing power has allowed all this stuff.
Sir.
Okay. Any other question before we close it? Domingos, Sophia, any question?
No, sir. Thank
I,
you.
Again, as I said, don't get stuck with the economic part of it. Understand the larger aspect of it to be able, and keep it simple, to be able to craft an answer to write in your examination.
Sir.
Okay, keep it simple. Don't get complicated with all the terms and norms and various theories which have been put. Once you are able to relate to what's happening around you, you'll be able to craft an answer and write your examination and come out of it.
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If no questions, then call it a day. I'll see you at 5:30 with MDI line then.
Thank you, sir.